During the whole time of the crucifixion, our Lord never ceased praying and repeating those passages in the Psalms which he was then accompanying, although from time to time a feeble moan caused by excess of suffering might be heard. In this manner he had prayed when carrying his cross, and thus he continued to pray until his death. And another one done. So this month we read the Dolorous Passion as seen by Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. Anne Catherine Emmerich was an Augustinian nun from the north of Germany, and she was a very pious woman. She was very poor and always very ill. And during her time alive, she had many visions in ecstasy of Jesus and different places she had never been to. And this book, The Dolorous Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, are from her visions. It is not written by her. There was a man named Clemens Baraton, I forgot his name, and he was a poet, and he wrote it for her. He visited her many times. He was a revert to the church, thanks to Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, and it was thanks to him that he was able to write it all down. Just quickly, in terms of legitimacy of the text, the church is not official, doesn't approve it officially. Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich was beatified by St. John Paul II, but it wasn't because of her writings or her visions. It was more about her life and how she lived it. So, just like with any mystic, it is private revelation. But there were many details that she couldn't possibly have known, even if Clemens, I forgot his last name, Bertoni, the poet who helped to write it, even if he did his own research after the fact, I don't think, what I'm trying to say is that it's not going to take you away from Christ. If you've ever had trouble picturing or even just understanding the Passion, how it unfolded, and how much our Lord suffered, or if you just don't get it, I think this book will really help. Perhaps you know, perhaps you don't know, this book was inspired Mel Gibson in many aspects in the Passion, in the film, and sometimes whilst I was reading it, I could see bits of it here and there. It starts off with her biography, just explaining who she was. So like I said, she was very, very poor all the time. She was always very ill, and she experienced stigmata. There's one instance that they described where there's a cross on her chest that would appear and that would bleed. From this time, there was a mark like a cross upon her bosom, consisting of 2 bands crossed about 3 inches long and 1 wide. Later, the skin often rose in blisters on this place, as if from a burn, and when these blisters burst, a burning colorless liquid issued from them, sometimes in such quantities as to soak through several sheets. Also, how that same scar would just heal, as if it just stopped bleeding. And the same around her head. There were dots of blood that would come through her head, just like when our Lord had the crown of thorns placed on his head, and how he bled from there. Just a quick thing, I find it very difficult to relate to people like Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, religious saints, just because there's this part in her biography which I thought was adorable. She was confessing her sins, or someone was describing her sins that she was confessing. It was probably one of the confessions was something along the lines of like, oh, when I was a child, I looked over the garden and I saw the pear tree, and those pears looked really good, and I envied those pears. That was her sin. And it reminded me of the Fulton Sheen quote where he says, like, when he hears nuns confess, it's like hearing popcorn pop. It was like that. So yeah, I find it hard to relate to them. There are certain, not unlike, for example, St. Augustine, who lived a life of, crazy life before. She was always really good, and it's hard to relate to that. Anyway, I think her life speaks for itself. I doubt that she lied or was even capable of just making things up. Like I said, she's had visions, not in this one, but apparently she'd had visions of places when she was a child or when she was younger, places she's never been to, but she was able to describe exactly that place. She had a very poor education. There was no way that she could have known certain things. Hello and welcome to April. If you would like to join me, this month we are reading The Interior Castle, or The Mansions, by Saint Teresa of Avila. I'm really excited for this one. There is a link in the description to the Telegram group that you can join, where you can share your favorite passages. If you need help, motivation to read, you can go sign up there. It's completely free. There's also a link to my Substack post about all the books we're reading this year, if that interests you. And also at the end of the month on Telegram, we have a book discussion via the internet where I can see you and say hi. So I would love to have you join, but for now, let's get back to the book review. I don't have the book. In the beginning, I kept comparing it to Maria Valtorta's The Gospel as Revealed to Me. I haven't read all of Maria Valtorta, but I have read the first volume as well as excerpts from different books, just because my husband read them all and he told me to read them. So I kind of compared the two, and at first I did prefer Maria Valtorta, but it's two different people, two different mystics. This one focuses solely on the Passion, but there were some information, certain scenes or facts that overlapped from both. And so if you've read Maria Valtorta, I guess it would be very interesting for you to read the Dolorous Passion, or if you've read the Passion part in Maria Valtorta, this one would interest you as well. What man will dare assert that he would have shown more courage than Peter if, with his quick and ardent temper, he were exposed to such danger, trouble, and sorrow at a moment too, when completely unnerved between fear and grief and exhausted by the sufferings of this sad night? Our Lord left Peter to his own strength, and he was weak, like all who forget the words, "Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation." So, like I said, it focuses on the Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. It starts during the Last Supper, where he gets everybody, all the disciples in the room, and he explains to them what's going to happen. He does the blessing for the bread and the wine. Excuse me. And then it goes on from there. In the beginning, what I really liked was the focus on Jesus' love for Judas, and how he really, really wished that Judas would choose right, how much Jesus suffered for Judas. She goes through great detail of the suffering that our Lord went through during the Passion. Multiple times when she was describing the torture, the physical blows that they would put on our Lord, many times she would say that if this had been done to a normal person, that person, like you and me, for example, would have died from what they did. And she would describe how there were hosts of angels helping, praying for our Lord, and how they would help him physically sustain. The fact that he never stopped praying And the same with our mother, our Blessed Mother, how she was united to him through the suffering she also suffered. She describes as well that as there were angels praying for our Lord, helping him to sustain himself, there were also demons all over the place that were helping the Jews who condemned Christ, and how they physically would enter into their bodies and give them ideas to do different things and help them along with those ideas. She described hell as well, how even in hell they're completely divided against one another. A lesson that I needed to remember was to not fall into despair, just as Judas, because that is really why Judas fell. He just fell into despair. He lost all hope. He lost all hope in the love of our Lord and his forgiveness, and he just focused on, there's no point. I'm gonna die, and I will never be forgiven. What I did was too awful for God to have mercy on me, and so I'll just take my own life. And then you have the complete opposite, where you have the Lord never ceasing to pray and just hoping and asking God his Father, for mercy and for forgiveness for everybody. Another part that spoke to me as well was at the end when Mother Mary was cleaning his dead body. So this is after the crucifixion, whilst removing the crown of thorns from his head. There were bits and pieces that were stuck that she had to pull out one at a time. And that just got to me because I have a son and I have a daughter too. So that the fact that, not only did she see her child die, but she also had to, take his body and clean it. But she never lost hope either. She always prayed just like her son. It is really vivid. Like I said, if you have trouble when it comes to understanding the crucifixion, I think if you're a very visual person, this will help. This is not what you see in the movie, but she also describes what happened after, when she describes Jesus shooting down his body, or his spirit shooting down from the cross, and then entering into limbo and purgatory, and then eventually into hell. And my favorite part about this is one of my favorite quotes from the book about that. Our Lord, by descending into hell, planted, if I may thus express myself, in the spiritual garden of the church, a mysterious tree, the fruits of which, namely his merits, are destined for the constant relief of poor souls in purgatory. The church militant must cultivate the tree and gather its fruit, in order to present them to that suffering portion of the church which can do nothing for itself. But it is with all the merits of Christ. We must labor with him if we wish to obtain our share of them. We must gain our bread by the sweat of our brow. Everything which our Lord has done for us in time must produce fruit for eternity, but we must gather these fruits in time, without which we cannot possess them in eternity. And anyway, there's a lot more, and I don't want to spoil it, but it is a wonderful Lenten read, and it's a great book to meditate on the Passion of our Lord and to really participate in that event. And you don't ever feel like it's not something that will go over your head. It's you read it and you see it as it's happening. I'm going to watch The Passion by Mel Gibson tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. Yeah, tomorrow's Friday. So I'm going to try to watch that tomorrow, and I'm sure bits and pieces from the Dolorous Passion is going to come up in there. But there's a lot more in the Dolorous Passion than in Mel Gibson's the Dolorous Passion. You know what I mean. Let me know what you think about the book, and I shall see you in the next one.